4:8. First John 4:8. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Meaning that all those things we just read about in 1 Corinthians, God is. God love, God hopes all things, believes all things, endures all things, because God is love. So when we hear stuff, when we read things that say God hates, we need to take those things and just avoid them at all costs. Because in the 7 verses in Proverbs 6, 16 through 17, if you'll turn there now. Proverbs 6, 16 through 17. It says, these 6 things the Lord hates. Our loving God hates these 6 things. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. So the reason I had us go through these verses is because I wanted to just set the tone that God is love. We read the biblical definition of love, and God is that. Because we read 1 John 4:8, it said, God is love. So now we're reading these 6 things the Lord hates. Our loving God hates these. The first one's the one that I wanted to point out, a proud look. Arrogance. God hates arrogance. God hates pride. So we fall into that, I'm so much better, I can do this, I can do that. God hates that. So that's why I wanted to base my talk on humility, because I fall into it so much. This week, being here, I've had so much pride come into my work, the work that we've done, and it hasn't really helped. It's hurt more than it's helped. So now we'll start in John 13, 1 through 17. This is where we'll do most of our reading. So Jesus is the perfect man, was the best example that we can read about to help with anything. Every act he did had a lesson to learn from. He was the most powerful being who walked on the face of the earth. And he knew that he could do anything he wanted to. He had all the power in his hands. Yet he did not go around boasting and telling everyone, I'm just so amazing. I've got all this power. I can do so much with it. He went out and he showed the power and was humble while doing it. He showed everything and did everything through his humility and never told everybody, I'm just so great, so much better. You see that work I just did? Because that's not what he was about. That's not what he came to do. He came to be a humble teacher and show us how we need to act. So, starting in verse 1. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, he had to depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God. I want to stop there. I want to look at the point where it says, Jesus, knowing that he came from God, is going back to God. Jesus came here. This is the supper right before he goes to get crucified the next day. And he knows that tomorrow, here on this earth, tomorrow I'll be going to the most wonderful place in the world. Tomorrow I'll be going to go to my Father and see everything great that he has from heaven. He instead shows his humility, and as we keep reading, rose from supper and laid aside his garments, took a towel and girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. So instead of going around on his last day saying to everybody, it's my last day, I want to make this count, I want to go do something crazy, I want to go bungee jump. Instead, he grabbed a towel and a bucket of water and he washed his disciples' feet. He served them instead of being served on his last day. And that's just crazy that on your last day, you would take up a bucket and soap and just wash people's feet. Now, I don't mess with feet. I think feet are gross. But he washed their feet. And that just showed how humble he was. Because he knows that they needed to learn still. Even on his last day, they still need to learn this one thing and this one way to act to others. Now we keep reading. Then he came to Simon Peter and said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. So Jesus answered Peter back by saying, you will know when it is time to know. Peter asks, what are you doing this for? Why are you washing my feet? And he says, you'll know when it's time to know. And we read in John 15, verse 15, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I call you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. So Jesus is just saying, in these verses, you will know when it's time. And then he tells him in John 15, verse 15, I don't call you servants, I call you friends. He makes everything that he knows from God known to his disciples because they're his friends. They're not just his servants or his people that he wants to go around teaching. They're his friends, the ones that he cares about. And that's why he tells them everything he knows. This is a good example that we need to look at and we need to learn from. And we need to keep our actions like Jesus does and inform our friends. We don't need to go around keeping that information that we know that's valuable for somebody's salvation. We don't need to keep it to ourselves. Keeping it to ourselves is like it says in here, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. All these things that we know and we keep a secret, it's hurting those other people that we're not telling. And we could maybe be doing it because pride, like they don't need to know it. I don't need to tell them. Or we could just be doing it because we feel like they don't need to. It's not something that really hurts them or bothers them. But everything that we know, we need to make known to other people because what we know is valuable. All this information that we get from the Word is good information for people's salvation. Verse 8 through 10, Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. So Peter tells Jesus to stop washing his feet because his pride is telling him, don't let Jesus, the Son of God, don't let him wash your feet. You know all the great things he can do. But that you don't need to let somebody that's so powerful and wonderful do this to you. Don't let him serve you. And he's taking away that feeling that Jesus is trying to show, that guidance that he's trying to give him. He's taking that from him because his pride is telling him, don't let Jesus wash your feet. He's better than that. And then Jesus tells him, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. So he's telling him that you have to let me serve you, and if you don't, and you let your pride stop you, you can't be with me. So then Peter replies, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. So then Peter says, God, wash the rest of my body. Continue to wash my hands. His hands are what lead him to mess with things that can be wrong. His hands are unclean. So wash my hands. They're what guide his motives. And Jesus said, no, I'm not going to wash your hands. That's not what needs to be washed in this situation. But then Peter says, wash my head. because my head is unclean. And Jesus says, no, I'm not going to wash your head. But he's trying to get Jesus to wash all these things, body parts that would guide his motives. His head, he can be thinking wrong things, and it's unclean. We all think things that we shouldn't. And that's why he's asking him to wash his head also. Continue reading. And Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all. So Jesus is telling him, your whole body is clean. There's no need to wash the rest of you. Your hands are the only thing I'm trying to wash, because this is the only thing I want to show. And this is the only way I need to serve you right now. So that's why he's washing his feet, not the rest of them. And now we're going to skip to verse 13 through 17. You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So Jesus is now telling them why he's doing this stuff. He's telling them the reason why he's doing it is because he's their teacher. He's not just here to go teach everybody else and not give them an example and just hold everything to him. He's here to show everybody what we need to do and how we need to serve and teach other people. And we need to practice that same love and service that he showed to the disciples. And then in verse 16, most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who sent him greater than he, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. Jesus is now saying, we're equal. You and I are equal. A servant is no greater than his master. So you could be my servant and I can be your master, but I am no greater than you are. We are all God's people. We are all one another together. And he's just showing a love and humility by saying, I'm the most powerful being. We don't know it, but I'm just like you are. And when we read these set of verses, we need to read it and have the same takeaway as they did. That we need to show others around us that might not be as smart, might not be as good as us or as clean as us, and show them the same love and humble service that Jesus does. I'm not saying to go out and wash their feet, but when you know something that would be beneficial to their salvation, we need to make sure it's known to them, and we need to guide them and teach them. Because what we know is not only good to us, it's good to everyone around us. And we need to show acts, and we need to show love, and show this humble service to everyone around us. And the reason we sang 10,000 Angels was because I wanted to add this to the talk. In the song 10,000 Angels, we sing, he could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world and set him free, but he didn't do that. He died alone for you and me. He had the power at his fingertips when he was being crucified to just snap them and say, I want 10,000 angels to come to the world and destroy it because I can't do this anymore. I can't bear this pain. I can't bear this burden of being away from my Father for taking up the sin of everyone around me. I can't do that. I need you to send 10,000 angels to earth and destroy it because I just can't be around here anymore to do this. But he did it. He took that pain and the sins for us. He was crucified for us. Everything he did was for us. All of his examples, everything, was to show us what we need to do. I have a few questions to ask. So, picture it's your last day on earth. Tomorrow you're going to die. You know it. Same situation as Jesus. Who are you going to serve? Or who are you going to let serve you? Now, I know on earth, when someone's going to die or on death row, we give them the last meal right before. Jesus' final meal was to serve others. He didn't get served on his last day. He served other people. And that's the example that we need to learn. Even on the worst times, the worst days, now we're going to go to the next story, and it's in Luke. It's Luke 18, 9 through 13. And this is a story about the Pharisee and the tax collector. We just talked about Jesus and his humility. Now we're going through the Pharisee and the tax collector. Now, a little bit about the Pharisees. They were the lowest people in like the ranking. If you were to rate the people that were in Rome, they weren't the lowest. They weren't the highest either. I'd say if I had to put them on a scale, they'd probably be like 4. From 0, they'd be up about 4. They were scholars and religious leaders under the Old Testament laws. So in Luke 18, 9 through 13, also he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you, I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give tithes from all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So here we read about 2 different types of people. The Pharisee, the proud, the arrogant, the one who is just so great, boasts about everything he does, and the tax collector. He wouldn't so much as look up to heaven when he was praying. He bowed down and knew that he was a sinner, and that he had done things wrong. He's asking for forgiveness because what he has done has hurt him, and he knows it. Now, when they were there in the temple, it wasn't like it was just the 2 of them. It wasn't like a big open space that was nobody was in there, and it was just the 2 of them. It was full of people. Everybody was coming to the temple to go see or go pray or do anything. And this Pharisee stands up against the wall or goes up to somewhere and just starts yelling. His prayer was not quiet. His prayer was not to only himself and only to God. It was to everyone around him so that everyone could know, I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all I have. I do all these great things, these wonderful things that I can because I'm just so awesome. It wasn't like he was just trying to keep it to himself. He wanted all to know about how awesome and amazing he is and all these great things he does. And then the tax collector, he's just over there, off to the side, over in the corner, and he's bowed down, he's praying, God, I'm a sinner, and asking for forgiveness for the stuff that he's done, for the life that he's lived, because he knows that he's done wrong, and he's done against the will of God and what we need to do. Now, tax collectors on the ranking list, they're right above just a regular citizen on my list. They were appointed by the Romans to just collect taxes from all those citizens. So they're just one step above. So he's not even up at the higher class and just like, I'm so great, I'm so this, I'm so that. He's on the lower class and just humbles himself. He's just humble and realizes that I'm a sinner, I need your forgiveness, God. And it says in verse 14, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. He went home and he was exalted, or he was justified and he was exalted because he humbled himself. God says, this man did everything right, and he's doing good. This other guy, he exalted himself, so he won't be exalted. He will not be doing everything right. He's still living in sin with this pride that's hurting him. James 4:10 reads, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. It's another picture of this tax collector. He humbled himself before God, and God exalted him. God made him great. Or God acknowledged it and gave this man forgiveness for what he's done, because his prayer was not to show others and not to boast. It was to ask forgiveness. So which person are you going to be? Which person do you want to be? I know I want to be the tax collector. I would like to live like a tax collector, knowing when I do wrong and not boasting about it, and not making it known to everybody how everything I've done is great, and just keeping these prayers to myself and not making them known to everyone else. What kind of heart do you have? The one like the Pharisee who's boasting about all the great things he does? Or the tax collector who's asking forgiveness from God because he knows that he's a sinner needing mercy? The answer is that we need to be like the tax collector. A man who is normal, who collects money, he's aware of his life, and asks forgiveness when it's needed. Doesn't go around praising himself instead of God. Because that Pharisee didn't care what God thought. God knows what we do. God knows when we sin. He knows everything about us. We don't need to tell God what we do, because He knows. The only reason that we do that is to bring pride and bring praise to ourselves. We just need to be like the tax collector. So we've all fallen into this mindset where pride, where we are just great in any way. We can be in that positive side where I'm so great, I've got the best stuff, I've got the best shoes, I've got the best pants, I've got the best socks. That's pride. We all fall into the mindset where that happens. If we didn't, it wouldn't be one of those things that God hates, that's an abomination to Him. It wouldn't be so high up on His list. The very first thing that He points out in the set of verses we read, it wouldn't be one of those things that we all didn't go through if it wasn't something He hated. We need to remember that Jesus came here to be an example, to show us what we need to live like, how we need to act. And He was a perfect example, so we need to live like He did. If He was humble, we need to be humble. Anything He did, we need to do. So in times when we're just going around our day, our normal day, and we see something or we do something, just remember, you can make it known, but it doesn't have to be exalting you, and it doesn't have to bring you up so much. We don't need to exalt ourselves, we need to humble ourselves. I have a few verses I'd like to read before we close. The first one, Proverbs 21:4. It reads, "A haughty look, a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked are sin." So pride. This verse is saying pride is sin. So straightforward. A proud look is sin. The next one, Colossians 3:12. Therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering. There, it says put on humility. We're being told to put humility on, put on humility, because God knows that we are prideful. God knows it's in our heart. We need to get that out of our heart, and we need to show humility. And we need to live on the humble side and not on the prideful side. So we need to be like the tax collector. I've said it so much because that's what we need to do. We need to live like Him. And if there's anyone who, after hearing this, realizes that they're not living right and they need prayers or they need help figuring out how to get this pride